Welcome to Mind Shield. We protect the mind and pursue the truth. Let's get started.
All right, so this isn't just another explainer. For our season finale, we're doing something a little different. We're calling it a credibility checkpoint. We're going to turn the lens inward, on ourselves, and put our own evidence-based process on trial. We're about to see if it can handle one of the most difficult topics you can possibly imagine.
This right here, this is our guiding principle. Any honest intellectual project has got to be willing to stress test its own ideas. It has to actively hunt for its own blind spots. That's not a weakness. It's a commitment to finding the truth, not just winning for your tribe. And that's the promise we've tried to live up to all season.
So yeah, that's what this is all about. Look, we're not here to sell you on any one conclusion, not at all. The whole point is to demonstrate a process, a way of thinking clearly when you're faced with a subject that is deeply complex and, frankly, incredibly emotionally charged. So let's see how our structured approach holds up under pressure. Okay, here's our roadmap. We'll start by defining what we mean by the world of CNSI. Then we'll dive into the actual science of sound and the tech of influence. After that, we'll get into the tough part, the human challenge, the burden of proof. And we'll end with our promise to you about how we'll handle new evidence from here on out. Right, let's get into it. To even investigate this world, we all need to be speaking the same language. A lot of the terms floating around out there are, well, they're loaded. They're inconsistent. So we're going to introduce a neutral, technical framework so we can explore these claims without getting sidetracked by all the bias. The term we're going to use is covert neurosensory intrusion, or CNSI for short. Now, what's really crucial here is that this is not a diagnosis. Think of it more like a neutral filing cabinet category. It just lets us group together a whole range of reported experiences and investigate potential technical causes without prejudging anything. Now, under this big CNSI umbrella, you find one of the most common and, frankly, most startling claims. It's called voice to skull, or V2K. This is the experience of hearing words that seem to be coming from inside your own head. This is a cornerstone claim for so-called targeted individuals, and it's usually dismissed out of hand. But is there any science that could even begin to explain it? We're going to find out. And then you have the other side of the coin, remote neural monitoring, or RNM. This is the idea that you can not only transmit information into the brain, but you could also read information out of it. We're talking thoughts, intentions, all read wirelessly. And as you can probably guess, this is where these claims run up against some pretty serious scientific skepticism. So let's lay these concepts out and do a quick reality check. First up, remote neural monitoring. The scientific consensus is pretty clear. There are no public, peer-reviewed studies that show you can read thoughts wirelessly without implants. The brain's electrical signals are just way, way too faint. On the other hand, you have directed energy weapons, or DUs. These are 100% real. The military's active denial system, which uses energy to create a burning sensation for crowd control, that's confirmed tech. And then you have Havana syndrome. The cause is still a mystery, but a major report from the National Academies concluded that directed, pulsed radio frequency energy was the most plausible explanation for what the diplomats experienced. So the takeaway is crucial, right? Some of this is science fiction, but other parts are documented fact. Okay, let's pivot now to the hard science. We're going to focus on a very specific, documented phenomenon that could be a potential anchor of plausibility for one of those big claims we just talked about. It's called the microwave auditory effect. The microwave auditory effect, or MAE, is also called the Frey effect, after the scientist Alan Frey, who first documented it back in 1961. And let me be super clear, this is not a theory. It's a proven, documented biological phenomenon. We know that pulsed microwaves can create the perception of sound inside someone's head. In fact, this was first reported by radar operators during World War II, who would hear clicks and buzzes that nobody else around them could hear. So how on earth does that work? It sounds like magic, but it's pure physics. It's a process called thermoelastic expansion. Here's how it goes. First, a pulse of microwave energy hits your head. It deposits a teeny tiny amount of heat, like a millionth of a degree, but it does it really, really fast. This rapid heating causes the tissue to expand ever so slightly, creating a minuscule pressure wave. That tiny wave travels through your skull to your cochlea, the hearing organ in your inner ear. And here's the amazing part. Your cochlea doesn't know the difference. It just detects a pressure wave and tells the brain, hey, I heard something. so you perceive a sound that literally started inside your own head. And get this, it's not just clicks and buzzes. In 1974, at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, a researcher named Joseph Sharp was able to hear and understand actual words that were transmitted into his head using microwaves. Now think about that. This isn't speculation. It's a documented experiment from a U.S. Army facility. It proves that transmitting intelligible speech this way is scientifically possible. So if the science is there, the next logical question is, has anyone tried to build technology based on it? Well, when you look at the history, you find a long, consistent interest from military and government agencies in these exact concepts.
This timeline really tells the story. It starts with phrase discovery in 61. By 74, they're transmitting words at Walter Reed. By 1989, we see a patent for a hearing system using this exact effect. Then in 2003, the U.S. Navy funded Project Medusa, which was explicitly designed to weaponize this effect for crowd control. And it keeps going right up to 2021, when official NATO reports are openly discussing something called cognitive warfare. This is not a fringe idea. It's a documented field of military research.
And this is where we are today. I want you to notice where this is from. This isn't some obscure blog post. This is from an official 2021 NATO report. They are stating in no uncertain terms that the human brain is now a domain of warfare. The stated goal is to develop tools to manipulate brain physiology. That's the strategic thinking at the highest levels of military planning. But we need to stay grounded here. Let's go back to remote mind reading. You can find patents like this one from 1976 that claim they can read brain signals from a distance. But what's the scientific reality? Well, the brain's electrical signals are incredibly weak, and they dissipate within just a few millimeters. Picking up that signal from across a room without an implant, it's just considered physically implausible. And this is a really important takeaway. A patent doesn't prove a technology works, or is even possible. So we've covered the science and the tech. But honestly, the biggest challenge here isn't the physics. It's the human factor. It's the social dynamics, the stigma, and just how incredibly hard it is to prove or disprove these experiences. This quote just cuts right to the heart of the problem. It's from Alan Frey, the scientist who discovered the effect. He showed that a simple wire mesh could block the microwaves. It was a totally sound scientific experiment. But it was immediately twisted and became proof for the whole tinfoil hat stereotype. That stigma shuts down any kind of serious investigation before it can even start. So why is this so hard to prove? Well, first, there's no smoking gun. The equipment should leave detectable signals, but none have ever been verified. Second, these experiences are subjective. They can be caused by known medical conditions and can't be independently confirmed. Third, a lot of the most extreme claims, especially mind reading, just seem technologically implausible based on current physics. Fourth, you have online echo chambers that can reinforce these beliefs and discourage other explanations. And finally, all of this creates a vicious cycle of stigma and mistrust between the people making claims and the authorities who can investigate them. And there's another huge layer here, the societal risk. I mean, just imagine for a second if it were confirmed that a government had a secret technology to influence thoughts. The result would be a catastrophic loss of trust in every institution. You'd have widespread panic, a fundamental crisis of personal identity. The potential for social chaos is so huge that it creates a powerful incentive for secrecy and denial. Which brings us right back to where we started, our own process. Given all this complexity, the ambiguity, the high stakes, how do we move forward? By committing ourselves to intellectual honesty and by putting truth over tribe, every single time. Part of that commitment means facing the strongest counterarguments head-on. This is our red teaming process in action. We have to acknowledge that these claims are hard to measure. We have to acknowledge that human brains are wired to see patterns, even in random noise. We have to acknowledge that scammers exploit this uncertainty. And we have to acknowledge the very real risk of causing public panic. We accept all these risks, and we respond with a structured approach, using source tiers, claim labels, and a public corrections log. And here is our promise to you. We're publicly stating what would change our minds. If stronger, verifiable evidence points away from these technological explanations, we will say so. And if new evidence comes along that validates them, we will update our understanding. Our goal is to get closer to the truth, not to be right. You know, this principle goes way beyond our show. So we want to leave you with a little task. Write this sentence down. I will revise my beliefs when better evidence arrives. Then sign it, date it, and keep it. Think of it as a personal commitment to intellectual humility and to the hard work of thinking clearly.
Ultimately, this whole exploration leaves us with a fundamental question for the age we live in. In a world of invisible systems, from radio waves to data algorithms to cognitive influence campaigns, how do we, as individuals and as a society, learn to tell the signal from the noise? There's no easy answer, but the process has to begin with asking the right questions.
And that is exactly where we're headed. Thank you so much for joining us for our first season. Season 2 is going to be all about building our technical literacy, giving all of us the tools to understand what's plausible, what's not, and how to think clearly in this world of invisible systems. We'll see you then.